All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Once again, I just want to thank you all for your time this evening. I know when we're on break, everybody kind of has their own agenda, so I appreciate you all taking some time to join me this evening. Just want to start out with just quick introductions, so I can go first. I am Amanda Haney. I am the instructional lead teacher at Stockbridge Middle School, and I'm also the MTSS coordinator.
Mhm. I'm Mr. Leroy Edwards. I am the mental health and wellness facilitator at Stockbridge Middle. I work with all grade levels 6 through 8.
I'm Taylor Williams, and I'm a seventh grade ELA teacher at Stockbridge Middle.
And I know we have Mr. Penland as well. I think he may not be able. Oh, he joined again. Okay, and Mr. Penland, can you just introduce yourself quickly, just in your role?
Yes, hi, I'm Mr. Tyler Penland. I'm an exceptional children teacher at Stockbridge.
All right, excellent. Like I said again, thank you all for joining this evening. And like I told you before we started recording, I want you all to be very candid in your responses because my goal is through our discussion tonight that I'm able to start creating a plan of action that I can implement to make improvements to where we are at Stockbridge. So I wanted to start with this. Oh, and here comes Miss Crum. I wanted just to start with this visual. Hi, Miss Crum. Give her a second. Hi, Miss Crum. She may not hear me. Okay.
Her mic is off.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Miss Crum. Can you just really quickly introduce yourself? And we had just got started.
Yes, hello. I am Sandra Crum. I am an ELA teacher at Stockbridge Middle School.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, so Ms. Crum, we were just getting started, and I was just telling them, as we discussed, just be very candid in your responses because my goal through our discussion tonight is that I start getting feedback on how I can implement changes and create action steps in order to create a more positive environment for both us and our students at Stockbridge. So I just want to start with this photo. Hopefully you guys can see it. And this is actually coming from the module that I'm in my course right now. And so it talks about beliefs and the gaps that people have. So looking at expectations, ability, motivation, and beliefs. And I just want us to take a couple minutes and think about looking at this diagram. Where do you feel that we are doing things well? And where do you feel like there's those areas where we could improve in terms of expectations, ability, motivation, and beliefs?
And this is in regards to the students, correct?
Well, right now, this is in regards to staff. So think about our
Okay.
staff. Where do you think we're doing well? And where do you think we have some areas for improvement?
I think expectations are pretty clear. They do a good job of outlining the expectations for sure. Yeah.
What do you think has contributed to a positive outlining of expectations, Ms. Williams?
A lot of the PDs that we sit in, and a lot of check-ins with our principal, like we just had our mid-year conference, just going through different walkthroughs and observations, letting us know what they're expecting of us. So I think they do a well enough job of setting those expectations for us.
Okay.
I would go with motivation. I think motivation, there's a lot of little things that we do to motivate teachers and staff, such as when we did breakfast, when we had the donuts and the treats and the coffee. This past Valentine's Day, if I memory serves me correct, we gave out candy. Um, we do scavenger hunts during the holiday, such as the elf hunt that we did. Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Ms. Crum? What do you think? What do you think is an area that we do well?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to turn my mic on.
You're
I was actually talking about the beliefs, but you couldn't hear me. Sorry. But the beliefs are something that's mentioned every time we have a PD, every time we have a meeting. The core values and beliefs are brought up. As far as district-wide, school-wide, in our announcements, it's brought up. I think, having our Tiger Pride and, everything that the school wants to represent, I think is given in our roar. I think the kids know what those things are, and I think they know how to meet those things as well.
Okay. So you all mentioned feeling like strengths are expectations and motivation and beliefs. Do you feel like that's just you personally, or do you feel like as a collective group, those are strengths for all of us in terms of our staff?
I personally would say that those are strengths for some people, more than others personally.
And I agree with you, Mr. Penland. I think that, in this core group here, I see those as strengths, but I do think that overall as a staff, these may not be areas of strength. What do you think are some of the hindrances as to why, as a staff, you all don't see these as areas of strength?
For me, with it being my first year there, one of the things that has personally stood out to me as a barrier would be ego. Um, it's very difficult to get through and interact with people who sometimes feel as if they have all of the answers. Things change. The times have changed, and our motivation for why we do what we do should never waver. But how we achieve that goal through motivation should change slightly to meet that end goal. But that's very difficult if you're always working with people who know everything, but what they know never shows out anywhere. So that would be something that I would add.
So what do you think we could do to combat those egos so that way that no longer is a barrier for us?
So for me, it comes down to, and you all may have already done this, I'm new, kind of putting people in a place where maybe they feel heard, maybe they feel accepted, may help some of that. And then just kind of letting people know up front that, whatever you're accustomed to will change. Letting people know that although things are shifting, your opinion is still valued. Because a lot of times it's not a matter of what you say, it's a matter of how you say it to people and how they receive it. And the motivation or the effort that they might put in even afterwards, to me, is contingent upon how you say something to a person.
Okay.
I also think that we lack the ability to all be together at one time or another. Like a lot of our meetings are separate. 7th grade meets here, 8th grade meets there. We don't have a lot of time together, like as a unit, as a building. I think that, is something that we could definitely, or an area where we could definitely improve.
Okay.
I agree with what Mr. Penland stated. I think sometimes ego gets in the way. However, there's also the buy-in, because that's very important. Whatever we do is take those skills that person have and help them to buy into what is the better for the whole school. Because we all have different skills. We all have a different mindset. We all capable of doing a lot of great things. What I cannot do, maybe Miss Crum can do. What Crum cannot do, maybe Miss Williams know how to do it. So we each come in with different sets. So we need to be aware of what each of us are capable of doing, or having and working with those skills to help promote positiveness within school.
Mm-hmm. And so, Mr. Edwards, I think what you're speaking to is this idea of transformational leadership versus transactional leadership. And so I
Correct.
think where I'm hearing where you're all at right now is that you feel like our leadership is more transactional. I'm going to do this because you're my boss and because you have authority over me, but I'm not doing this because you have put me in a place where you know these are my skills and you know that this is where I can shine, and you also know that given the opportunity I can build upon those skills and be able to create change in our environment. And that's one thing for me that's always resonated me when I started going through my first leadership program was I want to be a transformational leader. I don't want people to just do things because, hey, I'm your instructional coach, or hey, I'm your MTSS lead, so I need you to do this because we have a deadline, and if you don't meet your deadline, then I don't meet my deadline. But instead, I want to be a transformational leader. I want to look at people's strengths and say, hey, you know what? You would be a great fit here, or I could really use your assistance here, or have you considered volunteering for this because you have great ideas because of your background, and helping people and putting people in positions where they can grow. I know, Ms. Crum, like you finished up your gifted endorsement, which is amazing. And that's a benefit to us as a staff because you have a skill set where you can push students. Mr. Penland has this amazing skill set where he can push our ESE kids. And so every chance I get, I encourage him and tell him we're going to see so much growth in our students because of the way you're able to scaffold your instruction and make it to where our students can not only comprehend it, but you're pushing them to that DOK level 3 and 4. And then Miss Williams, with her background, writing is such a strength for her. So I lean into her when we get into the writing because I know she has the skill set to help our students to flourish in that. And we've seen that in our data because the three of you as a collective unit work so well together. But it's because I'm trying to learn how to lean into your personal strengths, because I definitely don't know all the answers. And I tell everybody that I don't know all the answers. I lean into you all so much because I learn so much from you every single week. So, okay. Well, thank you all for sharing about that. Something else I wanted to talk about this evening is social emotional learning. So I know that in our school we use Second Step on Mondays, but I want to dig a little deeper than that. I know that that's the curriculum we use, but I kind of want your thoughts on that. Do you feel like that's truly beneficial to our students and what you're seeing that they need? And if it's not, what do you think might be more appropriate for us to address their diverse needs that they have?
Well, for myself, I think Second Step, the program in general, I personally like the program. I think if the program is used the way it should be used, it can be effective. Now, I don't think every teacher is using it the way that it should be used. But I know that when I have discussions with my class, that they can really be good discussions, and you can get them involved. Sometimes you have to go a little bit above and beyond just the second step sometimes, and go into a little bit more deeper discussion than just what's on that screen. And I think that is what makes it a little bit more interesting, when you can talk about it in a real world experience for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what makes it more interesting, the Second Step.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think at the same time, the social emotional learning could be a little bit more than just Second Step. Kind of like how they have a capstone class. I think there should be something real world experience wide with Second Step too, not just in the classroom. Like, I think there should be something community wide attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
that could make it a little bit more engaging for them?
Do you
Um,
go ahead, Mr. Penland?
I was going to say I agree with Ms. Crum. I do believe that second step is effective. It's effective for me because I always try to take that lesson and make it relevant to the things I know my students have faced. You know, for example, if we're talking about conflict, I always tell students, think of a time where you had ISS, even recently, and then they're like, yeah, I could have done such and such better. So we talk through those things because a lot of times people don't care about certain things until they realize how it might impact them directly. And that's just the reality of it. I could care less about XYZ until XYZ is impacting my bottom line. So I think the more we make those lessons or whatever strategies are put in place relevant to what our kids need, and I think that only comes from truly being more community involved, then we can tailor whatever else we need to do to meet those needs.
So do you think in order to do that, that our staff needs more support?
I would say yes.
I do.
I would say
I do,
yes.
but also, and Ms. Crum said it as well. If everyone is not effectively, using second step, how can you truly get an indication of what's needed, right? Because if 20 teachers are using it, but 20 teachers are not, if you're looking at overall improvement, well, there's some inadequacies there, right? Because you don't have accurate information, because nobody's doing everything consistently. So that's also an issue as well, is that regardless of what you feel, I think people have to understand that regardless of how I feel about second step, whether it's effective or not, it is something I've been asked to do. And doing it over time, it becomes a routine. But the kids do learn. They learn more than you think they learn. When you ask them certain questions about certain things that are encompassed within those lessons weekly.
And I think it goes back to what you said. It's about building relationships. So I just think to when I was in the classroom with my 8th graders, I really took the time, like you were saying, Ms. Crum, to make my lessons relevant to them. And you were saying that as well, Mr. Penland. And so sharing my own experiences, sharing, I grew up in the community our kids grow up in now. So I understand a lot of the situations that some of them may be in because I was one of them. And so just making that extremely relevant. But I also think about we're still coming out of the pandemic. And so something I read a couple weeks ago was talking about our students don't know how to communicate effectively with each other because for 2 to 3 years, some of them were completely isolated from the rest of the world. And the only communication they had with anybody was people in their home or through the game or the phone or the tablet. But they lost that sense of being able to communicate
Okay.
effectively. And so I don't believe we're doing enough right now to bridge those gaps for our students. We know we're the middle child, we're in the middle school. So right now we're still dealing with the lingering effects. And so these 6th and 7th and 8th graders were receiving, they didn't learn the appropriate social skills in elementary school because they were at home. So a lot of the problems that we see and a lot of the concerns that we raise with immaturity and lack of being able to, get along with their peers, I believe it truly does stem from the fact that they were isolated from the world. And so we've got to do more to bridge those gaps. And I do think it comes from, like you were saying, Mr. Penland, being very intentional about what we're using for social emotional learning. Mr. Edwards, I know that this is an area for you that as the mental health and wellness facilitator, you really do probably the brunt of this work. Do you know anything that the district might be discussing about how they're going to, I don't want to say create more
So,
initiatives, but really see the initiatives through that they've established moving forward?
so recently we had a meeting in our department, and they are thinking about revamping Second Step. I do not know what that looks like at this present time, and I don't know if that's something that will be implemented in the new school year. I do know one of the things that I think the students also need to understand when we do second step is the why. Why are we doing this? What is the why? And not just the students, but also for staff. Why are we doing it? Because I also can see some people not doing it with fidelity. Um, and that's because no, they may not understand the why. And I will go in there and explain, here's the reason why we're doing this, which is all the points all of you just hit on: communication, learning how to communicate better with each other. We came out of COVID, students did not really speak with each other face to face. If you look at a lot of our students, they have a hard time just looking at you, speaking to you. They will look at the ceiling, they'll look at the floor, they'll look everywhere else, but they do not know how to communicate. I also believe, since you have that one class that you do each Monday, Ms. Crum, you said it very well, knowing your students. You know who your students are. You know what? This lesson is really geared for little Timmy over here because he is hitting this particular group of students. So when we talk about boundaries and space, it's really geared for that particular group of students to understand, hey, boundaries are very important, you know? So, and I also did second step when I was teaching social studies, and I had it designed, even though some of the activities I kind of like improved on it, because you guys mentioned that as well. Some of the activities in second step is not, it may not be as great, or you may not like it. You could have the right to change it and come up with something else if you wish to change it out. There's a lot of cool stuff if you just go online and you can change out certain activities. You could add, I have added videos from YouTube on different topics to enhance second step when we do it. But I know one of the things is planning, because of your time and how much time you have to put into it. And I understand that. But we're trying to convey a message to our students. It's very important to take that time to do that.
And when I look at the screen here that you have up here with ability, where it says they don't know how to do it or they're uncomfortable doing it, there may be some teachers in that position too. There may be some teachers who don't know how to do it or may feel uncomfortable doing it. You know, maybe some of the topics for them may be a little touchy, you know, and that's something that as far as I know, with doing second step, I've never had an opportunity to address any of those topics with anybody. And, you know, even though none of those topics are soft space for me, they may be for some other teachers, you know. And I
Yeah,
understand I don't know if you understand where I'm coming from with it, but
I
I'm just,
do. Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
mean, I just think it's something that, you know, we're told that we have to do, but at the same time, nobody really teaches you how
Explain
to
the
do
why.
it. You know, nobody.
There's been no modeling of what the
Yeah,
expectation. Yeah,
yeah.
you're
So,
absolutely right.
Ms. Crum, so what you're saying, if someone models a lesson for you or for the teachers, it will be very helpful. Is that what you're
I
stating?
think it would be helpful for some teachers, you know, that may be struggling with it, or, you know, maybe you know, everybody's not as comfortable with having these conversations with students, or, you know, presenting some of these topics, you know, or even knowing what questions to ask or knowing how to get their students to
Mhm.
open up. You
Right.
know, everybody's not, you know, equipped
Yeah.
for that. So, you know, maybe modeling or helping, you know, or
Hmm.
teaching might be beneficial for some.
And I think, Ms. Crum, that's going to go back to building relationships, because we have teachers that they may not know how to build relationships with their students.
Mhm.
There may be, and that may be because of cultural differences. It may just be because, your generation and these kids' generations,
Mhm.
you can't connect with them. I think it's hard if you don't have young people in your own life, or if you're not
Right.
involved in the lives of young people at this point, to connect with some of these kids, because I know sometimes they say stuff and I'm like, I don't know if that's inappropriate or not, but I'm about to Google it. And if it is, I'm about to say something to them. And so, but I also do that because I have my own child, and I'm like, is this appropriate or not
Right.
appropriate? Because I feel a little bit like out of the loop. So,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay. So let's talk about student engagement.
Hmm.
If you were to rate our students' engagement inside the classroom from a 1 to a 5, 1 meaning they are completely disengaged, and 5 meaning they are fully engaged, where do you think you would rate our student engagement?
Somewhere between 2 and 4, depending on the class period for me.
Okay.
You know, it's you know, yeah, it just really depends on the class period for me.
What do you think? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Crum.
Well, I think when I think about like my fifth period and my third period seem to be more engaging to me than my other 2 periods. You know, it also maturity plays a role. Like my fourth period is very immature, very silly. You know, it's you spend more time trying to just get them to be on task. But that's also my ESC class, you know, and there's a lot of kids in there. You know, there used to be a time when we had 2 ESC classes, but we don't have the staff for that. So makes it a little bit more challenging this year having them all in one room. Because that's a big class, really.
How many is in that class?
Half of that class, I have 26 kids, and half of the class is ESE.
So you're
Like
talking
literally straight down the line.
Yeah. And so the conversation, Mr. Edwards, that Ms. Crum and Mr. Penland and I have had, is even if they're thinking about doing a co-teaching model, the issue is it can't really be small group because you
The large amount.
you have 13 of them that are students with exceptionalities. And like you said, you can't call them all out, but even in just trying to make a small group for them to do a true like co-teaching, it's very difficult because the personalities and the exceptionalities require a lot of attention at all times. Miss Williams, what about you? Where would you rank your students' engagement?
I would say around the same. I agree with Miss Crum. My third and my fifth period are definitely more engaged than my fourth and my sixth. And honestly, I think it's because of the lunch period. And by time sixth period roll around, they're ready to go home. So I think that's where the engagement lags. But it most definitely could be improved. I would say uh, around a 3 for all my classics, except for my third and fifth period. I would say about a 4.
Okay. Do you all see anything being done from a leadership lens to assist you with those classes that are disengaged or that you see less engagement?
I'm sorry, and I was talking the whole time and didn't realize the mic
You're
was
okay.
just yapping away. So I will say, when it comes down to Ms. Crum is hit it on the nail regarding our fourth period. Some of the behaviors she experiences, I may not experience when I have certain kids, like Micah Manning. I can handle Micah. I just need him in dosages like medicine. Um, I can't take all of him at one time. Now, when it comes down to my third and fifth period, I'm honestly going to rank my student engagement at a 4 or 5 because they are highly engaged when they're in my classroom. And I can honestly say that.
Do you think that they're highly engaged, though, because it is a smaller, more intimate setting? Do you think that plays into it at all?
I do, and teacher personality as well.
Mhm.
I do, I really do, because sometimes it's so easy for us to get upset that we kind of shut down or we become a little more reserved. But just kind of keeping in my mind that although it's not the best class, it may not be the best group, it may be stressful teaching them, still keeping that motivation, which was on the list that's provided by you, at the forefront of all that we do is so important, because that motivation means that I'm not just there for me to get a check. I'm really here for those kids. And
Mhm.
so I have to keep my energy level to the point to where they can still learn and still be engaged in an environment that is different. Also, for the kids that I teach this year, they have never been taught like this before. As they have outwardly expressed to me that sometimes I hate you, uh, but for the most part, you're a good person. So they've never been challenged before. So
Mhm.
when you put them in a challenging environment, yeah, maintaining engagement could pose an issue. But just keeping the why in front of them, like, why does it matter? Why does it matter for you to read on grade level? Why does it matter for you to write well? Why does it matter beyond seventh grade that you're able to do the things that we're asking you to do? So getting our students in our building to not only focus on the here, but the longevity of things, because a child's mind can only see the here and the now. We train our kids in our school to think beyond the here and the now, and the Stockbridge Middle School life, because Stockbridge Middle School is 3 years.
Mhm. So, Mr. Penland, something you just said resonated with me, because you said, my students haven't been challenged before. And so one thing, Ms. Crum and Ms. Williams, I know, and I know that both of you know, is that last year when they were in sixth grade, an entire team of our students went without a physical teacher for 6 months. And I know, Ms. Williams, you came in at the end of last year. So I know you know exactly what I'm talking about, coming in at the end and doing your darndest to just maintain until the end of the year. So thinking about that and how that's really, I think, played into probably some of the disengagement you've had with your students, because it's not all your students, and I can speak to that because I've been in your classrooms, but the students that, or the class periods that are more or lacking more of the engagement, I do think part of that contributes to the fact that they lost almost a whole year of instruction.
Of structure.
And so you're not only building in learning gaps for all your students, but yeah, like Mr. Edwards was saying, you're having to rebuild structure. So thinking about next year, because we know prayerfully, and I know it will, you're going to receive students who have had a full year of a teacher in front of them providing instruction. What do you think we can do differently next year, knowing that at least you're going to have students that have had structure and had engagement from a real live teacher in front of them for an entire year? What are some things you think we can do differently next year, to assist with engagement? Think about some of the things that we did this year that we saw some increases in engagement.
For me, definitely the more interactive assignments that we give our kids. So the gallery walk they enjoy, any type of group work where they can collaborate with peers, they really to enjoy it. And even with the new standards rollout, it seems that as though we won't be really focusing much more on foundation. So I'm looking forward to them having, well, maybe not next year, but the next go around after next year, having those foundations so that we don't have to spend so much time teaching them those skills that they should already have.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree with that, Miss Williams.
I definitely agree with that. And also, those that next round of kids won't be COVID
Right.
kids either.
Yes.
So
Yep.
Okay. So
we
they,
definitely have a
yes. I think that's a benefit.
better stand next year.
And Ms. Williams, I love that you said group work. So one of the articles I read this week, and I guess I've never thought about it from this lens, it said, there's a difference between group work and putting our students in a group and having them all work independently. And that really hit me hard because I thought about when I was in the classroom, I used to tell my kids, you're going to do group work. And really what I was telling them is, I'm going to let you talk to Miss Crum and Mr. Penland and Miss Williams, but I need all of y'all to turn in an assignment. But what I know for you all that I've seen this year is when you all have them in a group and doing group work, you've given everybody a task. You know you have your scribe, you know you have your timekeeper, and you know that they're going to come up with one artifact. And so for me as an instructional leader, I thought about, wow, I need to make sure that I am really conveying that to all the teachers, because while I know the three of you do that, I walk in classrooms all the time and the group work is Amanda and Taylor are sitting over here working together. They're collaborating, but they're both doing an independent assignment. And so it's really not group work. It's more just like collaborative work. So that was something that stood out to me. I was like, okay, that's something I need to take note of, because I know that I kind of just like fall into that bin of, oh yeah, that's group work. No, that's just, you're just collaborating. You're not really doing a group assignment, because then you would have specific roles for everybody. Okay, so last thing I want to talk about, professional learning, professional development. And I laugh because I know that now we have PD every Friday. So you have to see me 3 days a week. But I just want to know your thoughts just in general. How do you feel about PD? What do you think we could do to improve PD and make it more meaningful or relevant to you personally?
Well, for me, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I remember us having an opportunity to like say what PDs we felt we needed, and versus us just going to PD after PD after PD after PD. And I feel like sometimes I'm sitting in PD and I'm like, why am I here? Like, I already know this like the back of my hand. I do not need to be here. I could be grading stuff right now. I could be calling parents right now. Like, this is a whole hour and 20 minutes that I don't need to be in here.
Right.
You know, so I just feel like sometimes the PDs are not necessarily PDs that we have to be in. And I just feel like, you know, when you've been in, like I've been in Stockbridge, I'm going on year 10. And 10 years of the same PD, I don't know. I just think sometimes we just don't have to be there.
Okay. Somebody else?
Personally, I feel as though it's a lot of sit and gets. Just like the kids, I wish they were more interactive. I know I mentioned in one PD before that I wish there were more safe practices for us to actually go up there, have a chance to model whatever
that are actually safe.
that are actually safe. But you know, just having that, I feel like would assist, especially a first year teacher who has no background in education. And I'm getting honestly thrown all of these terminologies I'm not even familiar with. And that goes back to that ability. I just feel like if we had more safe practice, more opportunity to, because I'm hands-on, someone hold my hand through this process, I feel like that would be more beneficial than sitting in a room and just, because we do like the instructional framework, and we do the work, we do like we do the lesson as the kids would, and that's fine, but just less sitting there talking. I'm not an audio person. I need to
Hands-on.
I need to be able to experience it.
So I know one thing in one of our instructional coach meetings they talked about was like tiering your teachers. And so me personally, I think it's a great idea, because Ms. Williams, if I know you are like top tier with writing, then what, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, leaning into that and having you do a PD, you deliver it so that it's not someone who is disconnected from the classroom. Because I know when I was in the classroom, sometimes you go to PD and the people who are delivering PD, I used to be like, you haven't been in a classroom since the dinosaurs. So what you're telling me is not relevant to what I'm seeing in my classroom every day. And so I do believe that PD needs to not only be relevant, and what, go back to what Ms. Crum said, being choice. So if you know you're receiving specific feedback on your observations, then I should have the choice to say, hey, this is the PD I need, and I need either you to curate that, or I need you to provide me the opportunity to go to Griffin Risa, to go to another school, to go to another classroom, and see that in action.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, Ms. Williams, it's not sit and get, but either I'm seeing it modeled for me or I'm getting to do the safe practice and doing it myself and getting feedback. But again, feedback has to be safe. Feedback has to be positive, and then say, hey, I see this, which is awesome. Moving forward, let's work on this. But I know that that's not how it comes across. I know that there is a takeover spirit. And so once the takeover spirit comes, then even as adults, we shut down because you basically have popped my balloon. And so, and I can say that because I have been there. I have these great ideas, and I know that I know what I'm talking about, and I know that this can be effective. Yes, it needs to be fine-tuned and polished, but once you get up and you basically put the big red X through it like a student's paper, I'm just like, just forget it. Just whatever. Again, going back to that transactional situation, just whatever you say, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and sometimes, if people don't feel heard, it does make people shut down. You know, I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been in our building long enough to hear, amazing ideas. But also at the same time, people have stopped sharing because they don't feel like anybody's going to hear those ideas. So, I mean, why speak up if nothing's going to ever change? So,
Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank you guys. This has been very informative for me. Um, I truly am like a sponge when I get feedback from my colleagues and my peers. I really do. I soak it up, and it resonates with me because I know. I tell people all the time, I'm on the same playing field as everybody else. I don't have any titles behind my name. So, what you all do, I'm still in that work, but I know where I want to be. And so, when I get the opportunity to get into the position I want to be in, I want to be the type of leader where people can come to me and say, hey, like Mr. Penland just said, I don't feel like you heard me in this meeting. You listened, but you didn't hear me. And these are things that, I'm concerned about, or I want people to feel like, hey, I was attempting to show you how I would model this lesson, but you took over. And I want people to be able to feel comfortable and confident to come to me and say, I didn't appreciate that. Like, I didn't like that, because I want to be the type of leader where people feel like she doesn't think she knows it all, and she's willing to admit when she's wrong, and she's willing to change and to adapt. And I think that's so important, because I think so many times our leaders get into this rigid box that I can do no wrong, and you will do what I say, and you will never know if I mess up, but I'm going to make sure to point out when you mess up. So this was great for me. And these are some things that I can even take back when we have, our Monday admin team meetings, talking about PD, because we know it's not going away. I can continue to advocate for what you all really need and what you want, because that's part of climate and culture, is making sure that you're being heard and that you do have someone that advocates for you. Because I think that's important as well. I can't really do a lot at the district level to advocate. I can only do what I can in my meetings, but getting your voices heard as much as possible. So I really appreciate y'all so much.
Thank you for having us.